When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, and to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." This is the word of the Lord. Well, I'm so grateful to you for affording me a sabbatical, having been away for the spring and most of the summer. And a lot of what I did on the sabbatical was to work on my doctorate and to think about, what does it mean to be Christians? What does it mean to be a congregation in an age of the smartphone? And that's where I got the title for today's sermon, Phone Freedom. I want us to think a little bit about the changes that have come because we're all carrying supercomputers in our pockets that are connected to everyone everywhere at the same time. And I would contest that this change is it's bigger than the invention of duct tape. It may be bigger than the invention of the wheel and fire. Our life is transformed because of these digital devices we carry with us all the time. And one of the things that has changed is the nature of the temptations that we face. And the good news of Jesus Christ, that he says in two ways, is that he brings freedom to those who are captives. One of the ways we can be taken captive is through temptation and sin. Jesus Christ brings the good news of freedom to those who are in bondage, sometimes literal bondage and slavery. Those who are in bondage to addiction or depression or sin, Jesus Christ brings us freedom. And he brings us freedom from temptation. And the question I would like for us to look at and think about, the question I've been thinking about for months, is how to be a Christian with a phone. How to be a Christian congregation, knowing that we have this technology now. How do we enjoy the blessings of the good news of Jesus Christ in our digital lives? What do I mean by digital lives? I just mean that we have a computer with us everywhere we go, and that is connected to every other phone and to the internet around the world. In addition, we now live in a network of relationships, connected to so many more people than in the past. Our life has changed as individuals and as a congregation. This technology is not just new, it is different. And our lives are now different. As parents and as children, our lives are different than they were before. As husbands and wives, our lives are different. As disciples of Jesus Christ, our lives are different because of this technology. Two ways to think about what has changed just this morning is the incredible speed of our connectivity and the personal choice that we now have. And the challenge here, this comes from a pastor named J. Kim, is that speed tempts us to impatience. And personal choice tempts us to isolation. Here's the good news, though, that though speed tempts us to impatience, Jesus Christ sets us free through Sabbath worship. And though the personal choice, which is incredible, tempts us to isolation, Jesus sets us free through community. That's pretty abstract. Let me try to make that a little more concrete for us. What do I mean by speed? I think you have a sense of it, but you just saw it. This week, we had someone walking around taking pictures of the kids during Vacation Bible School, assemble a slideshow, and then by the end of the morning, that would show up on our screens for the closing part of Vacation Bible School. Think about it. Walking around, snap, 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 a little email, a little assembly, and those pictures are up on the screen. I was tempted to ask Chris to do that this morning, to take a picture of you and send it, but you can see he's giving me a strong no. That would have caused a nervous breakdown. I don't want to inflict that on him. But with a little training, maybe if we had asked a 20-year-old, we could have pulled it off. But you see the speed of that, how quickly things can move, and that could happen anywhere around the world. Or think about how easily you can access information. If you want a list of all the quarterbacks for USC or Clemson, you could pull it up on your phone and text it to me before the sermon was done. Please don't do that. Pay attention. We can get information so quickly. Or more importantly, we can connect and get things done. There was an advertisement I saw, because it was too hot to be outside, is why I saw it. An advertisement of a woman who's on an airplane, obviously uncomfortable. She's got one person sleeping on her, someone's snoring in her ear, and they show on her phone she's texting with someone, texting with her pharmacist. And she says, I think my UTI, my urinary tract infection has come back. And the plane's bouncing. She's obviously uncomfortable. And the end of the commercial is that her medication is going to be waiting for her at her hotel room once she lands and gets to the hotel. That's the kind of speed that has been introduced in our life. That's wonderful. The challenge is that kind of speed will tempt us to impatience. We can throw a fit when the Wi-Fi is slow. Or here's an example of the impatience I think that may be seeping into us as a society. In May, there was a woman on an airplane in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And the plane was meant to go to RFK in New York. And it was delayed. And she was frustrated. Okay. But she decided to solve this problem by getting up and trying to go into the cockpit and have a chat with the pilots. It did not go well. The flight was not speeded along. It was delayed by 2 hours because they had to take her off the plane. I don't think she ever got to New York. That's an example of the kind of impatience that can infect or come into place in our lives. Or I think it's September in South Carolina, it will become illegal for us to operate a handheld device while we're driving. Now that is a great safety measure. But why are we so impatient to get a text that is probably going to be a silly meme? Our digital lives give us incredible speed, but they can tempt us to impatience that affects our whole lives. Fortunately, we have a Lord and Savior who is at work to always free us and rescue us from temptation. And the one way that Jesus frees us from a temptation to impatience and many other things is through Sabbath worship. Well, the good news is I can say to you, you did it. You came. You have accepted his gift of freedom from impatience simply by being here, by joining us online. This is an incredible moment that we so often don't stop and reflect on. But what is Jesus doing for us here in worship? The word Sabbath simply means stop. And that was the Lord's command to the slaves, the children of Israel, when they came out of slavery, that one day a week they had to stop, that they got to stop. After years of working from sunrise to sundown, 7 days a week, one of the first things they needed to learn to do was to stop. That was the Lord's word to those slaves set free. During Vacation Bible School this week, I was walking around. I didn't have an assigned job, but I would just walk around and see if I could be helpful here or there. Maybe there'd be a particularly good craft I could join in on and have some fun with the kids. I walked by one of the rooms in the gym building, and the door was open. There was a soft light in there, And I looked in, and there were a couple beanbag chairs and some fidget spinner type toys. And the room was labeled low stim room. I thought, what in the world is that? Low stimulate. It took me a minute. That means a low stimulation room. Sometimes we now know kids get overexcited and wound up, and they just need a place to go and be quiet. When I was a kid, they called it timeout. Now we call it low stimulation. Pretty much the same thing. And I thought for a minute, I said, I kind of wish we always had a low stim room, when I get overwhelmed, a place I could go and just be quiet. And I realized we do. This is that room. Part of the transcendent power of gathering for Sabbath worship is that we have a moment when we are not bombarded. We have the gift of silence. It's powerful. It's rare in our lives much of the time. But we can come here and take a moment and in silent reflection confess, rejoice, breathe, or simply stop. One of the many amazing things about this room, I don't know if you've ever thought about it. This is one of the few places in our lives now where no one is advertising to us. No one is trying to sell us anything in this room or when we tune in online. We'll ask you to give to the Lord, but that's quite a different enterprise. That is not an exchange of goods and services for money. I noticed this one Sunday before worship. You may never have noticed the large monitor that's on the back wall of the sanctuary. It's just a giant smart TV. And we put what's on the screen back there, in part so the choir can see baptisms and the Lord's Supper. That's a big part of why we did it. One Sunday, I came in here, and the smart TV had gotten discombobulated, and it went to its natural home screen. And part of what smart TVs do now is they suggest things for you. We think you'd like this movie or this service. And I realized that TV was advertising to me and the congregation in the middle of our sanctuary, and I was really animated about it. I did not like it. So we turned the volume all the way down to make sure that wouldn't happen again and simply switched over to the proper feed so it worked right. But I was surprised at my response to advertising in the sanctuary. Because part of what is precious about this space is we are not stimulated and prodded and provoked by so much of what happens to us. And that is an antidote to impatience. It's important to gather for Sabbath worship so we can stop being overstimulated by the sound and noise and commerce of this world. And when we stop, the Lord is relieving us of impatience. Here's something ironic. When we gather in this space, we are also our senses are also highly stimulated. We see an infinite variety of color and shade and texture. When we look at the light passing over the windows, we don't even think about it. But that's part of why this room brings a sense of peace. The incredible variety in the ceiling and beams, our organ, our piano, our singers, bringing organized stimulation input to our senses to align ourselves to the Lord of the universe, the one who created everything. And so we are relieved of being focused on ourselves. The good news of Jesus Christ is that he brings freedom in all and any circumstance. And one of those circumstances for us is the speed of our lives together. Do you need freedom? Freedom from impatience? That's part of what God is giving us here every time we stop for Sabbath worship. Another powerful factor in our lives, I mentioned before, is personal choice. The number of choices we have, again, through our phone, through that giant TV in the back, all over the place, through wristwatches, through screens on our TVs, or screens in our cars, that seems like might be a dangerous distraction. We have these choices everywhere. And in a positive sense, it gives us access to all of our interests. I was thinking of this in terms of my family. Just as we use one channel, YouTube, we might have two people who are learning something about music. Another person is planning a hike. Another person is planning a meal. Another person is planning a mountaineering adventure. And I'm looking up something to do woodworking on. Each of us is able to look into our own interest. And ideally, maybe we come together and share those when we're sharing a meal together. Another great way we see this personal choice manifest is if you get on a streaming service and a movie you would have never thought to watch is suggested to you and you enjoy it, or some music that you would have never thought to listen to is given to you and you enjoy it. Maybe a clip from the preacher shows up on your social media stream and it does something helpful for you. But sometimes this personal choice gets strange, and it gets strange because it's not just personal choice. We have targeted content coming at us. And it is great when you get suggested something you enjoy, but sometimes it's a little strange. This spring at my house, when I would look at any site with advertising, I noticed it was advertising cute sundresses to me. I don't buy a lot of cute sundresses, as you might imagine, but my wife and my daughter probably had been shopping for a cute sundress online, and because we're on the same router, the software that controls that was advertising to me in the same way that it thought it needed to advertise to them. This targeted content can actually start to feel a little weird or aggressive or invasive. So let me share this with you. One time, Laura and I were in a disagreement. We've been married, it'll be 29 years in August, don't worry about it. We were in a disagreement, an argument. And not long after, I was on social media and there was an advertisement for marital counseling. I don't like that. It felt invasive. It felt a little isolating, strangely enough. And that is the challenge of the personal choice we have, is it can tempt us to isolation. By the way, let me give you a practical point, a way to address this, which is this. When you gather as a family for dinner, put away the cell phones. Now, some of you are saying, well, of course. And some of us are saying, that's impossible. It's not impossible. I will admit that sometimes I was the worst for wanting to pull a phone out of my pocket. But just as a practical piece of advice, give that a try. So, this personal choice can tempt us to isolation. It can make us separate. I think of it as a family, literally watching different things in the same house, but not together. It can separate our attention within ourselves. You may not know this, but much of social media is designed on the computer algorithms they use for slot machines that want to keep your attention just long enough and then change it. There's something in our brain that wants that change, and it calculates how long, exactly how much time each of us wants to stay with one thing or one to a move, so we become isolated even within our own attention span. That's something entirely new to be walking around with us. We can become so isolated by this technology that can connect us so well. Here's a practical family point that you might try on that front, is to sit down with kids and take a look at their phone together. It's your phone, by the way. Or maybe share your phone with them, not so much to see what they're doing, but to see what they see in this device you use so often. And you can see what has their attention much of the time. Something to think about as a practical point. When we are immersed in our phones, so often we can be drawn into isolation. We don't interact with each other. We don't see stories that have a long and resolving arc. So what are we to do in the face of this isolation? Oh, there's one more thing. I just want to mention this problem in isolation. This is very important for parents and grandparents. Is our kids, because when they're in a device alone, they face a lack of guidance. And things can change so quickly. Here's an example. A kid's looking on a social media platform, how to make an awesome airplane, paper airplane. That's perfectly appropriate for a boy to be looking up, right? How to make a great paper airplane. The trouble is, the next video that pops up is some yahoo spouting things that are misogynistic and hateful to women. Now, if that's on the TV in the living room as a parent or grandparent, you would hit pause and say, whoa, 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 whoa. We've got to talk about this. But because our devices can isolate us so much, as parents, as older brothers and sisters, as uncles and aunts and grandparents, it's just another kid sitting next to someone. We're not there for that important moment to provide guidance about what's coming into our kids' life. So I hope you see that this isolation can have a powerful and dangerous impact on our lives. What is the remedy? How does Jesus provide us freedom? Jesus provides us freedom in the power of community, drawing us together to wrestle out with each other our disagreements and differences, to support each other in our needs. I saw a lovely example of this when I got to visit my parents this summer. I spent a week at my parents' house. I don't think I spent a week at my parents' house since I finished college. And every morning I would write some, and then I would get up and I would go with my dad to his old guys coffee group. They met at 10 o'clock at the same coffee shop. It's perfect. It's after the breakfast rush, but before lunch. And they would meet there, half dozen, 8, 9, 10 guys. Sometimes someone's wife would come, and I went there every day with them. And of course, there are old guys there. They're solving the problems of the world. They're telling the same old story, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times in the same coffee, same morning. It's all right. But they're a community. They would ask about each other. Has anyone heard if John has gotten the biopsy report? The details of their lives shared and encouraging each other. It was a beautiful example of community. And that is the gift that Jesus Christ gives us in the church to protect us from isolation. I'm not sure, but I think this is the smartest parenting decision that Laura and I ever made. And I have to tell you, we did this not out of wisdom, but out of cheapness. We made the kids share a phone because we were too cheap to buy one for each one of them. And that meant, first of all, they were to some degree monitoring each other. I'm a little frightened about how much access we gave them 10 years ago, but that's another conversation. But even more, as a small community, they had to negotiate with each other how to live together. And of course, they could bring the problem to me, but the solution was simple. Just give me the phone. That's the answer. But they had to work out together who would have it and when, going where. The church is a group that stops to worship on Sabbath, but it's more than that. We together are the people of God who live together in a community that can sustain us. That is a huge part of what was happening in VBS this week. Of course, the kids are learning about trusting and having faith in Jesus, but they're also together playing. The adults are interacting with one another across multiple generations of people. I always like to walk through the kitchen during Vacation Bible School. The snack crew is the one that's probably having the most fun because they get to hand out treats, and then they visit together in the kitchen. That visiting together is part of the gift of Jesus Christ in his church, so that we are guarded from isolation, to guard us from loneliness. You can see the same thing happening on the Friday morning men's breakfast, or the Presbyterian women's gathering for circle, or the women who gathered together to play, what's that Chinese tile game? I never can remember the name of it. We do that as a church because it brings people together to share their lives. That is part of the gift of Jesus Christ, is that we are together. It's part of what a choir gains by working to sing together, to literally be in harmony with one another. So I encourage you to do two things as you think about being set free from isolation here at church. The first is to show up. You did it! Well done! But to show up also at the Friday morning breakfast, or Sunday school, or just the coffee hour between worship services. To show up and be present at things, even that the activity may not be of much interest to you. But in being together, Christ is building us up as his people. The other thing you can do to guard yourself against isolation is service. There are things the church needs to have happen, and that is a great reason to serve. But as a pastor, I encourage everyone to find a place of service, because it is also a place of connection. Whether you're helping with the audio-video system, or bringing our refreshments on Sunday morning, or helping in the front office, or part of a work crew that's serving outside of us. Those are not just nice things to do. They are part of how Jesus Christ frees us from isolation, because he brings us together. We are living in a world with technology that is not just new, it's different. But we have a God who is unchanging and able to face any circumstance. In the face of our challenges and our temptations, Jesus Christ gives us freedom. Our job is to simply take it up. So I challenge you this week, as you're moving through your digital lives, to just be aware. Where am I tempted to impatience? Where am I tempted to isolation? And how is the Spirit at work, the Spirit of Christ at work, to set me free? All glory be to God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.